Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of CONVOCO, in times of uncertainty, how can we manage to make the right decisions, and what might be a valuable strategy to adopt? Is it better to make a well-reflected decision based on 75% of what we know, or should we go with our gut feelings and thus intuition? The importance of reason has been stressed for centuries. But in the times we live, getting back to our emotions seems more appropriate. Studies have shown that the more complex the task, the less reliable conscious reflection becomes. By comparison, deciding at gut level seems to be more reliable and more correct. In times of uncertainty, we need intuition, because no matter whether you prefer the rational or the intuitive approach, in uncertain and volatile times, we need to be capable of judgment. And good powers of judgment are not based solely on facts. And so the players of today are called upon to pay more attention to their intuition. What does this mean? How can we define intuition? How does intuition, that is our gut reactions, affect the judgment arrived at by our so-called belly brain? The psychologist Professor Gerd Gigerenzer speaks about fast and emotional knowing. Intuition, he says, is a form of unconscious intelligence, and he is convinced that it is based on experienced and instinctive rules of thumb. Scientists call this heuristics. Heuristics is the art of focusing on the essential. It is simplification, a reduction of complexity. It comes about by ignoring some information or by taking mental shortcuts. The neuroscientist Antonio Damasio defines gut feelings differently as follows. The unconscious part of the brain compares the negative and positive emotions involved in a decision. It then passes the results of this via our body to our consciousness, and that is what we call gut feelings. All good and bad associations are queried within minutes. When it comes to complex decisions, we make use of our store of endless and unconscious memories, each of which is linked to an emotion. No matter how we define gut feelings, either in terms of psychology or of neuroscience, we know one thing for sure. It is not easy to take gut decisions in a society that had already become used to relying on the mind even before Kant. You'll have to be brave, because how can you explain a gut decision, and how can it be justified? If we are unable to prove good reasons for our decisions, they seem to lack legitimacy. However, legitimacy is something that is required in a society shaped by rationality, and without legitimacy you are vulnerable. And if your decision proves to be wrong, justification and exoneration will not come easy. This is the main argument used against intuitive decisions, especially in the economy. For example, just consider the liability privilege outlined in Section 93 of the Companies Act. Does it apply if board members have taken their decisions intuitively? Section 93 of the Companies Act states that the board can only be relieved of its liability for the consequences of the decision it takes if these decisions were made on the basis of adequate information. Some maintain that this requirement is not met in cases where decisions have been taken intuitively. This is because it is almost impossible for us to fully understand the intuitive decisions taken by another person. In conclusion, all that can be said is that you have to have guts to admit that you took a gut decision. Nevertheless, we have to bear in mind that emotion matters in all decisions, even the ones we consider rational. Both men and women are always influenced by the emotional content of the information they receive, even when the facts have been presented and they point towards a logical decision in a particular direction. The infamous normativity of the counterfactual is at play here. We have accepted, since the Enlightenment, that how we act is guided by irrational factors. It is therefore reasonable to reckon with the unreasonableness. The following image, suggested by the American evolutionary psychologist Jonathan Haidt, shows to what extent we can be influenced by emotion. Our mind consists of two parts, and our reason is mounted upon the unconscious like a serving rider on the back of an elephant. And yet, our reason only makes up 1% of our cognitive processes. And there is another aspect that makes rational action difficult. The chances of long-term success are ignored in favor of benefiting from short-term gains. However, it is evolution which dictates that the human mind always prefers the immediate reward. Let me give you an example. Students were asked to choose whether they be given 10 euros today or a guaranteed 11 euros tomorrow. How do you think the majority of them decided? Most of them preferred to have the 10 euros today. Individuals must try to switch off this automatic mechanism in their decision-making. This can only be done by generating powerful and positive emotions like hope and trust, for example, which is another task of good leadership. Good leaders should offer perspectives, convince people, and lead the way with vision and with passion. This is important in building a bridge towards more remote successes. The following applies to any gut decision. If we make a decision intuitively, then it is essential to act out of conviction. It is vital to follow a plan and have a strategy. Without a strategy, there is no real direction. And without direction, we forget to consider the possibility of failure, which again is an essential foundation for acting successfully and making successful decisions. Only fools assume that nothing can go wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of CONVOCO, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to today's lecturer. Professor Gigerenzer will be discussing risk, how to take good decisions in times of uncertainty. Following that, René Obermann and Heinrich Weiss will be talking about decision-making in uncertain times. A very warm welcome to all of you, and a very warm welcome to Professor Gigerenzer.